The first marker looked almost accidental. A few stones stacked into a lopsided triangle near the trailhead. "Probably kids," Mark said, stepping over it. He was the unofficial leader of the group, a fit 30-something who'd done this hike a dozen times before. "Kids don't stack rocks like that," replied Lena, crouching to look closer. She was the quiet one, always with a camera around her neck. "Look, it's perfect. And there are 3 smaller piles pointing that way," Thomas, the skeptic, groaned. "So it's art. Congratulations. You discovered Appalachian Banksy." The group laughed, too loudly for how quiet the forest was. It was early afternoon, and the sunlight came through the pines in thin, pale spears. The 5 of them had set out for what was supposed to be a 2-day backpacking trip. Mark, Lena, Thomas, Sarah, and Nate. The one carrying most of the food and all the bad jokes. "Let's just keep moving," Mark said, adjusting his pack. "We'll make camp by the river before dark." But an hour later, they found another one. This time it wasn't rocks. Thin branches had been lashed together with twine, forming a crude circle, and hung from a tree limb just above head height. Inside the circle, someone had tied a bundle of fresh green leaves. "This is starting to get Blair Witch," Nate said, half joking. "Don't," Sarah snapped. She had been jumpy all day, brushing at her arms as though the forest itself was touching her. "Just don't." Lena took a photo. These looked deliberate, like signs. "Signs for what?" Thomas asked. "The world's worst scavenger hunt?" Mark walked a slow circle under the hanging branches, scanning the tree line. The woods were utterly still, no birds, no wind, just the faint sound of water somewhere downhill. "Let's see where it leads," Mark finally said. "You can't be serious," Sarah hissed. "It's broad daylight," Mark said. "If someone's leaving these, maybe we find out why." "Could make a good story." Lena's eyes lit up. "I'm in." Nate shrugged. "Sure, better than staring at squirrels all day." Thomas hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. But if we get murdered, I'm haunting you." They followed the next set of markers, which were spaced just far enough apart to keep them walking faster than they wanted to. Each one was stranger than the last. Stones in precise geometric shapes, branches woven into knots, one tree with a spiral carved into its bark. After another half-mile, they entered a clearing. At the center stood a single pole, blackened with age, with something tied near the top. It was a small cloth bag, dark with moisture. Nobody spoke as Mark stepped forward and pulled it down. The bag was rough burlap, tied with twine. Inside, he found a charm. A bone carved into a crooked symbol none of them recognized. "What the hell?" Nate began, but stopped. Because somewhere, far off in the woods, came the faint, steady sound of a drum. No one moved at first. The drum beat was faint, steady, as if it had been there all along and they'd just now noticed. "We should go back," Sarah said. Her voice was tight, almost pleading. Mark shook his head slowly. "Not yet. This is someone's trail. We follow it. We find out who, or they find us," Thomas muttered. But nobody turned back. The next marker was a circle of stones, with a single branch stuck upright in the center. Lena knelt to take a photo, but her hands were shaking. "These are getting organized," she said, "like someone wants us to see them." "Then maybe we should play along," Nate said, forcing a grin. They kept moving. The forest felt different now, heavier, the air thick and damp. The usual forest sounds were gone. No birds, no wind. Just the drum, faint but constant, coming from deeper in the trees. Another marker. 2 trees with bark stripped clean on the inside, leaving pale vertical lines like open gates. "Okay, this is freaking me out," Thomas said. "Good," Mark said grimly. "Means it's working." They pressed on until they found something new, a clearing smaller than the first, with the remains of a fire pit. Charcoal was scattered like black teeth, and next to it lay a piece of old canvas. Mark picked it up and shook off the dirt. It was a crude hand-drawn map. On it were the same symbols they'd been following: the triangle, the circle, the spiral. And near the bottom, drawn in dark ink, was today's date. "Nope," Thomas said, backing away. "I'm out. This is some horror movie." "Shut up," Nate hissed. He was staring past Thomas, deeper into the woods. Between the trees, a flicker of orange light. Mark motioned for silence. They crept forward, step by step, until the trees thinned and the ground dipped slightly. Below them was a clearing. At its center burned a wide, low fire. Around it stood a circle of people in long, dark cloaks. Each wore a mask, some carved from wood, others bone white and smooth, with no features at all. The drumbeat was louder now, coming from somewhere just beyond the fire. The figures moved slowly, in unison, swaying like tall grass in the wind. "What the hell is this?" Nate whispered. "Ritual," Lena said softly. "It has to be." Sarah grabbed Mark's sleeve. "We have to go. Now." But as she said it, her foot snapped a dry branch under the leaves. The sound was small, but it was enough. Every masked head turned toward them at the same time. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the cloaked figures began walking toward the edge of the clearing. "Run!" Mark hissed. They bolted. Branches whipped their arms and faces as they tore through the underbrush. Behind them, the drumbeat quickened, faster and faster, until it felt like it is inside their skulls. "Left!" Nate shouted, pointing at one of the carved spirals glowing faintly on a tree. They followed it, desperate, crashing through the dark. More markers appeared, triangles, circles, gates of stripped trees, leading them deeper into the forest. "They're guiding us," Sarah gasped. "No," Mark panted, "they're hurting us." And he was right. Within minutes, they burst into another clearing, larger this time, lit by half a dozen fires. The figures were already there, waiting, masks glinting in the firelight. "How?" Thomas started, but a hand grabbed him from behind and yanked him to the ground. Others rushed forward, seizing Mark and Nate. Sarah screamed as Lena tried to pull her free, but there were too many of them. "Don't fight," one of the masked figures said, voice muffled but calm. "It will be quick." They were dragged to the center of the clearing. The fires threw long shadows, making the masks look impossibly tall, inhuman. The drumming stopped, and in the silence, Thomas could hear only his own ragged breathing. The leader stepped forward. His mask was carved like a stag's skull, with branching antlers that glowed orange in the firelight. He raised a hand, and the others began to chant, low and rhythmic. Mark strained against the hands holding him. "You don't have to do this." The leader tilted his head slightly. "We do." Thomas's last memory was of the sky, black, starless, and the heat of the fire on his face. The chant grew louder, faster, until it was all he could hear. Then came the sound of the drum, one last slow beat, like a heart stopping. Morning. The forest was quiet again. Where the fires had been, there were only cold ashes and trampled grass. The clearing was empty, as if nothing had ever happened. By noon, a new group of hikers came through the area. The first one slowed, frowning. On the ground ahead of them was a new marker, a perfect triangle of stones pointing deeper into the woods. "Hey," he called over his shoulder, "come look at this." And somewhere, far off in the woods, the drum began to beat again. If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.